Iran threatens Israel with a war of obliteration, and Israel responds by declaring that in the event of an attack, we have the doomsday's weapon. This sets the stage for the blow that is awaiting Iran and Hezbollah. Meanwhile, fighting continues in the Gaza Strip, where 3 Israeli soldiers were killed over the weekend amidst a renewed offensive in the hornet's nets of Sajaiya. However, after the defeat of Hamas in Rafah, the IDF is now moving into the 3rd phase of fighting in Gaza. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 268th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and all their proxies and terror elements in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. The big headline today is that Israel is on the brink of an all-out war with Hezbollah. But it must be clearly understood by everyone that a war with Hezbollah also means a war with every Iranian proxy organization in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and even Afghanistan, and possibly also an open confrontation with Iran itself. The envoy of the Islamic Republic to the United Nations referred to last night's tensions between Israel and Hezbollah and wrote a post on his official X that if Israel expands its activities in Lebanon, a war of extermination will develop. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah thanked Iran for this supportive statement, declaring, "We see the achievements of our martyrs and what their blood has achieved every day. We must understand that the magnitude of the achievements and victories that have been achieved so far and accumulated over decades, especially since the victory of the Islamic Revolution in Iran." Hezbollah also responded to the Iranian statements by launching a large barrage of rockets and drones into the Galilee, causing damage but no casualties. The IDF responded with airstrikes on Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, including a Hezbollah military site in the Zabkin area, 2 operational infrastructures in the El Khamai and Khula areas, and a military structure in the El Adisa area. In the meantime, the Lebanese news portal El Akhbar, which is close to Hezbollah, reported yesterday that the Shia militias are training hundreds of fighters in Iraq and Syria for a battle against Israel. But Israeli officials were also making announcements in the last 24 hours. This included Yair, who's the chairman of the Aerospace Industry Workers' Council. He spoke at the Cultural Shabbat event in Yehud Monison. He was saying that if we understand that there is an existential danger here, and Iran, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, and all the countries of the Middle East decide that it is time to settle accounts with us, I understand that we have the capabilities to use doomsday's weapons. We also emphasized that the Americans, the British, and the Germans help us in an intelligence aspect. They know how to inform us where there are moves that may danger us. Amidst all those rhetorical statements, Saturday was also a tense day at the northern border with Lebanon. At least 25 rockets were fired into the Galilee from Lebanese territory, and there were reports of 7 terrorists, some from Hezbollah and some from Palestinian factions, eliminated inside Lebanon as well. The IDF also released an unusual document in the last 24 hours, including color photographs showing the exact sequences of Hezbollah terrorists who entered a military structure in the Khula area. It is also important to mention in this context that attempts have been made to shoot down Israeli aircrafts over Lebanon using advanced anti-aircraft missiles. In other words, both sides are revealing more and more advanced capabilities to harm the other side, in an apparent effort to deter the other side from escalating the situation. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant also made a statement on Saturday during the tour he took of IDF positions on the northern border with Lebanon. Speaking to the troops and in the presence of several journalists who escorted him, he stated, "We are not seeking war, but we are ready for it, and we will react a T-junction crossroads for both the enemy and us. If the enemy chooses war, we'll know what to do. If they choose a settlement, we will respond accordingly." I hope that this is where things will lead, but knowing is impossible. Meanwhile, the political website reported last Tuesday that American intelligence estimates that a large-scale conflict could break out between Israel and Hezbollah in the coming weeks if a ceasefire agreement with Hamas is not reached. According to the report, the Biden administration is trying to convince both sides to reduce tensions, but American officials do not believe that the agreement between Israel and Hamas, which is on the table, will mature to anything. Guys, I'm constantly being asked by viewers and supporters how they can practically help Israel, and today I am proud to introduce an organization that really saves lives in Israel. And that includes Jews, Arabs, and anyone else who needs help. I'm talking about Magen Adom, the medical first response organization that is on the front lines, in the south, in the north, on the borders, and he was there also on the 7th of October. The volunteers of Magen Adom are the first line of defense for anyone who is wounded or injured in a terrorist attack or a natural disaster. They are true heroes, standing up in the face of danger every day. Under the attack of rockets and fire from Hamas and Hezbollah, they move in to treat the wounded, even while under fire themselves, committed to reach every wounded person everywhere, providing life-saving treatment and protection. Magen Adom is entirely funded by donors, and they need your help to pay for ambulances and medical equipment, training, and protective equipment for the brave volunteers, and more. So if you'd like to help Israel in this conflict and save lives, please consider making a financial donation to Magen Adom. You can see the link in the description of this video or on the screen now. Now back to the news. In the last 24 hours, the forces of the IDF's 98th Division began an operation in the Sajaiya area in the Gaza Strip, above and below ground at the same time. This follows intelligence information indicating the presence of terrorists and terrorist infrastructure in that area. Soldiers from the 7th Brigade's combat team began the operation with a targeted daylight raid, while the combat team of the Paratrooper Brigade began to operate after sundown to keep pressure on the terrorists. Simultaneously, with the entry of the ground forces, Air Force aircraft in cooperation with the fire complex of Division 98 attacked dozens of terrorist targets in the area. The operation was also preceded by dozens of strikes on known terror positions in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, including terrorists who are hiding in schools and facilities used by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. These terrorists were operating out of the United Nations humanitarian facilities in the Deir el-Balach area. Civilians were evacuated from the area before the battle began, and intense surveillance from the air and ground was also carried out before the IDF opened fire with precision weapons in an attempt to minimize harm to civilians. Elsewhere in the southern city of Rafah, the Nahal and Givati brigades under the command of 162 Division have eliminated a number of terrorists in the area in the past day and destroyed many terror infrastructures, including tunnel shafts in cooperation with the Air Force. In the center of the Gaza Strip, the forces of Division 99 have also been successful in eliminating several terrorists in the past 24 hours. On Friday evening, 2 rockets were detected being launched from the north of the Gaza Strip towards the Israeli community of Sderot. This is a city in Israel. One was intercepted, while the other fell in an open area. The position from which the rockets were launched was attacked with airstrikes and artillery a short time later. Please continue to spread the truth, share and follow us, and take a minute to click the follow button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It helps us reach more and more people with what is going on in Israel. The IDF is operating extensively in the Rafah area, and it has now taken full control of the Rafah crossing and the Philadelphia corridor. Forces from Division 162 are moving deeper into the city to destroy terrorist infrastructure and dismantle the 4 Hamas battalions operating in that area. The IDF spokesman occasionally publishes a short message to the media about the IDF successes in Rafah, but these statements refrain from officially announcing that the IDF has located smuggling tunnels that cross from Egyptian territory under the border into the Israeli territory and the Gaza Strip. These tunnels, which are the primary route that Hamas uses to smuggle weapons and ammunition into the Gaza Strip, are also used to smuggle narcotics and other contraband that Hamas uses to fund its operations. The work to locate these tunnels is very difficult, as Hamas has had years to perfect its methods for hiding them. This includes keeping information known to only a small group of operators. This makes it difficult for IDF intelligence to locate these tunnels, and even if they are located, the work of exploring them so they can be demolished is slow and must be done very carefully. However, with all that being considered, it must be said that the IDF is working very quickly, and in just 8 weeks, the IDF has located entrances to 25 smuggling tunnels along the Philadelphia corridor, which stretches for about 15 kilometers from the neighborhood of Tel El Sultan, which is located in the coastline at the southernmost point of the Gaza Strip, to the border with Israel in Kibbutz Kerem Shalom. Soon, the major combat operations in the Gaza Strip will be completed, and some of the units that have been fighting there for the last several months will be withdrawn so they can prepare for the difficult task ahead of Israel's northern border against Hezbollah. This will mean that the IDF officially moves to phase 3 of the operations in the Gaza Strip. This will include pinpoint raids at the small-level unit, rather than large-scale military maneuvers supported by the armor, artillery, and air force. Such raids have already been carried out recently on Hamas positions in Bet Lahia, Sajaiya, and Dar Shtufa. However, the IDF does not rule out the possibility that in the future they will return to divisional-scale combat formations as they used to do in Phase 2. It's also important to point out that out of the 3,000 terrorists who made up the Rafah brigade before the IDF operation in the city, it is estimated that 700 have been taken off the battlefield, either eliminated or wounded so badly that they are not able to fight anymore. Most of the rest of the terrorists fled north, mainly to the nearby city of Khan Yunis, or remained in Rafah to operate as small guerrilla groups, lurking in tunnels, emerging unexpectedly to fire at IDF forces before diving back into their tunnels to try and escape the return fire. But as previously reported, the IDF has means of surveillance that allow it to see these terrorists and direct fire at them at the moment they emerge from the tunnels, and every time this happens, a new tunnel entrance is revealed, which allows the IDF to explore and destroy it. However, the Hamas operatives remaining in Rafah are still very dangerous. They deploy anti-tank ambushes, snipers, and explosives with surveillance cameras and remote observations in every large neighborhood. The statement by Division 162 adds some details, saying that we have defeated the neighborhood battalions of Savora, Brazil, and others, and the last remaining battalion is the northwestern one in Tel El Sultan, which is handled by Brigade 401. This is an armored corps brigade. There are areas in Rafah that we have not yet entered, such as the northern suburbs of the city. In a related story, soldiers of the Nahal Brigade found a children's board game over the weekend in Rafah, modeled on the popular Snakes and Ladders board game. But instead of snakes and ladders, this Hamas version has rockets that players can ride to higher levels in the game and destroy IDF tanks whose barrels point down, meaning that players who land on them are knocked back a few steps. Players win the game by successfully carrying out the destruction of Israeli cities. This is yet another example of how Hamas brainwashes Palestinian children into hatreds of Jews and Israel, grooming them to join the ranks of the terrorist army when they are old enough. In addition to this horrifying board game, the Nahal soldiers also located many weapons and large stocks of ammunition. As usual, the weapons and ammunition were stored in private residential homes as well as other civilian infrastructure. Please continue spreading the truth by sharing, following us, and subscribing to this YouTube channel. And if you'd like to receive additional videos like this one and others, please consider making a financial donation by going to our website at www.tbn.org/Israel. Finally, we come to a report about the diplomatic efforts to bring this war to a conclusion, as the United States has proposed new wordings to a proposal for a deal to release the remaining Israeli hostages. These efforts are prompted by US fears that if the war in Gaza is not wrapped up soon, it increases the chances that a much larger war will erupt on the northern front, which would lead to an even larger regional confrontation. Please continue to spread the truth, and more importantly, pray. Pray for the peace of Israel, pray for the peace of the IDF soldiers, pray for the truth, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem.